Invincible Mumu. By Han Jung-Wheolya. Chapter 120. Title of the Youngest. Part 1. Do not tremble. I won't feel good after killing you if you do. At those words that could only be considered a humiliation, Shin Eui couldn't even respond. All of his past titles were meaningless now. Mumu's strength was something that simply kept shocking him. No one can stop him. He even considered a scenario where all four attacked him together, but he couldn't see a victory. No, even if all of the Murim sects united to fight him, they could not overcome his power. Shin Eui looked at Mumu with trembling eyes. Just the slightest touch from this boy would likely blow his head off. Is this what it feels to be near death? All sorts of thoughts passed through his mind. He hadn't lived a bad life. He was born a lowly captain and made a name for himself later in life. Even if he died here, he would have no regrets. And then another thought entered his mind. If this boy wanted revenge, he could just kill us all. Why did he then show off his strength? Mumu's actions didn't seem to show that he wanted revenge. Then why was he showing off this power? As Shin Eui turned towards Mumu, he decided to ask. If you were going to kill me, just do it. Why bother showing me your strength? Mumu gave him a casual reply. I am trying to show that killing one of the four great warriors isn't really difficult. So you are trying to humiliate me? Why would I bother with that? I did tell you. What did you tell me? If I killed you and the three other warriors, it would only make things more annoying. At those words, Shin Eui frowned. He couldn't understand what the child meant. Even if he wasn't from the forces of evil, anyone who had their parents murdered would go after their enemies. Yet this child didn't seem to be like that. Is it because he doesn't have a force behind him because he only recently found out about his father? If that was the case, he could understand since Mumu said he was adopted when he was young. Which would explain why he had little affection for his biological father. If he grew up under a person who is a scholar, then there is a chance. Mumu's strength was clearly unrivaled. It was on par with the power of natural disasters. If Mumu decided to walk down the path of revenge, no one could stop him. However, there was one thing that was stopping him. The boy's own intentions were to not walk down that path. Thud. Shin Eui knelt down and looked at Mumu as he said. No matter what your father is, it doesn't change that I am your enemy. And even if I die in your hands, I will have no resentment. Is that so? Mumu responded rather dryly. At this response, Shin Eui touched the ground with his forehead. Thud. If people had seen this, they would have been greatly shocked. A man hailed as one of the saviors of the land, and Murim, who never knelt in front of anyone, was now doing so. To the point of even touching the ground with his head. I don't know why someone ready to die is doing this. It doesn't matter even if I die. Then why are you doing this? I do not ask you to do this as your enemy who is about to die, but as a warrior. If you take revenge, please end it with just the four great warriors. Only kill the four of you? Please let our blood relatives live and end your revenge with just our lives. That was what he wanted. The cycle would never stop if Mumu and the other children decided to kill each other. However, if Mumu agreed to end the revenge on just the four great warriors, then it would be fine. The weight of their titles was different from ordinary people. From another perspective, they were simply four humans in the end. Shin Eui believed that only four people weren't a huge sacrifice. Thud. Shin Eui slammed his head on the ground once more. Please. Mumu stared at him and then said. But you said that if I killed you all, the land would unite as one? That is another annoying thing. To Mumu's question, he replied. There is a way to deal with that. A way? Our deaths can be done cleanly. Cleanly? What do you mean? Mumu was puzzled. You said you didn't want things to become bigger and bother you, right? Yes. That's right. Then, you just have to make sure the public doesn't know what killed us. What? At Mumu's question, Shin Eui raised his head. Put off the idea of taking my life for now. At that, Mumu tilted his head. A delay in this kill? If I die here, news of your revenge will spread all over the realm. I am not going to beg for my life. Well, okay. If you delay taking my life, I will gather all four of us here. Mumu's eyes shone at this proposition. You will bring them all? Yes. I swear on my life. That was an offer that Mumu never thought he would get. If you finish the act in a place where no one would see, our deaths would not become a problem for you. Mumu touched his chin. Should he risk his life for this offer? Obviously, if the people didn't know that he had taken his revenge, no one would bother him. This wasn't a bad proposition, but how can I believe that? I have confirmed that you can wipe the land clean with your strength if you put your mind to it. Why would I make false promises to try to save my life? Mumu looked into the eyes of Shin Eui. Even if he looked like he had forgotten fear, his eyes could not lie. The sound of his beating heart and trembling body clearly showed that he was ready for death to come. Mumu stared at him and said, I see that you are serious. But by what means will you bring the other four great warriors? Will they even agree? Shin Eui had made this choice because he had seen Mumu's disastrous strength, but what of the other warriors? They wouldn't believe Mumu unless they witnessed his power. And even if they did, there was another problem. Would they agree to give up their lives? I want you to give me a chance. A chance? Right. Some might refuse if I ask them to follow me to prevent more sacrifices. Then how will you bring them all? At this, Shin Eui spoke with a bitter face. My defeat will move them. Defeat? Yes. All of them, including me, are warriors with renowned names. My defeat would certainly lead them here. Shin Eui would use the sympathy card. Of course, even within the four great warriors, there was a hierarchy that dictated their order. Of course, even among them, one or two would love to meet a strong man outside their small group of four familiar faces. If that is the case, will we be working together? We will, and I will get them. If you give them a chance. What chance? Give them a chance to fight you. Even if they are your enemies, they are warriors, and warriors must be given a chance to fight to the death. This was actually a proposal for the four great warriors. He knew their odds of winning were slim, but he couldn't simply ask his allies to give up their lives without a fight. Therefore he used this opportunity. Even if we lose to this child, it will end with the sacrifice of just us four, and it would be a chance to erase the existence of a disaster if one of us wins. He didn't mention this, though. This was a gamble with the lowest probability of success. Please accept this. Shin Eui desperately hoped that Mumu to accept his plea. If the boy changed his mind and killed him here, he would become a walking disaster that would also kill the other three. Thud. Shin Eui, who imagined that grim future, hit his head on the ground again. Please. Mumu, who continued to stare, finally replied. Fine. I did it. As soon as Mumu accepted his offer, Shin Eui breathed a sigh of relief. It was a gamble that would be paid with his life. This deal would prevent a greater tragedy and also give him one last chance to fight this monster. This was someone who could not even be compared to that monster from 17 years ago. This was a fight where almost all of the odds of victory were tilted toward Mumu. Still, we don't know. Shin Eui thought that this move was at least clever. The four of them had managed to kill that man in the past. Now, 17 years later, they would have to do it to his son. Is this fate? Perhaps it was. He wasn't sure what the ending would be, but for now, he decided to struggle was the best option. With that thought, he then stood up. As Mumu approached him, Shin Eui decided to express his gratitude. Thank you for giving me the chank. SSH. Before he could even finish, Mumu brought a finger to his forehead. This? evidence of your defeat. What? Flick. Mumu's finger moved explosively with a loud breaking sound. Quack. Shinny Uijayam groaned in pain as his body bounced backward. After flying back 20 or more steps, he only stopped after some trees broke his momentum. Kuok. Shinny Uijayam staggered out of the branches and felt his bones shaking in so much pain that it was difficult to keep hold of his senses. He only had a moment to protect himself with internal energy but had failed to do so. The bone of his forehead felt as if it had sunk in. Quack, Pain assailed him everywhere in his body. Bang! Mumu appeared in front of him as Shinny Uijayam waved his hand in a futile attempt to stop anything more. This is enough. No, it isn't. Flick. Mumu captured one of his arms and would not let go despite his futile struggle. Shinny Uijayam could not even budge. Mumu then said, "If you cannot use one arm for the rest of your life, wouldn't it be possible for the other 3 to be a little doubtful when coming to me instead of being excited?" What? Maybe I should do both arms to make it more effective? Chapter 121. Title of the Youngest. Part 2. Deputy Dan Pilhu wanted to follow the two of them immediately to see the duel end. Mumu's opponent was Shinny Uijayam, one of the 4 great warriors, who could be called one of the best of the current Murim. A man who could be called the best swordsman. At first, he was sure that Mumu would be defeated. Dan Pilhu thought there was still a gap between a growing monster and the finished product. But after seeing the change in Mumu, he wasn't sure anymore. That sword which Shinny Uijayam showed. Although the invisible sword didn't have a shape, it was unusual to have such energy contained in it. Perhaps the man had attained some type of enlightenment? More than anything else, he was curious about who would win with the changes on both sides. However, the situation seems to have changed now. Whoa! Deputy! Please go and have a look. We were told not to. Is that really a refusal? Huh. Let's think about the academy first and lead the students here out. At the headmaster's urging, the deputy and the teachers reluctantly returned to work. However, even the students were all curious about the duel. This is a mess. Without the faculty there, the students would all run to watch. Because of this, no one could go see the fight. The reason he had to move may be because he thought it was the right thing to do. Perhaps Mumu and Shinny Uijayam were considering the damage that could have happened. Anyway, the 2 senior staff members were still able to control the students. The deputy then recalled. Those things that Mumu always had on. He didn't know why, but they were currently on the ground. He thought he should keep them for Mumu instead of letting them become lost. So he turned his head. For a moment, he doubted his eyes. A white and hazy mist seemed to appear for a short time, and those iron bands suddenly vanished. How is this happening? Ugh! Shinny Uijayam's right arm was crushed. Even before that, his forehead was already sunken in and injured. Even his arm was now like this. No matter how strong he was mentally, he couldn't come to his senses. Shinny Uijayam sighed. Did he notice it? Mumu had crippled his right arm. The bones were shattered and muscles torn, ensuring that he would never be able to lift a sword again. Well, the boy did what he said he would. He then noticed Mumu holding his left hand. This is worse than it looks. With his right arm completely useless, his skills would go down. As a result, any coordinated attack with the other 4 great warriors was no longer possible. Losing his left arm would also turn him into a real cripple. He wondered if Mumu had noticed his plan. Is this retribution? If it had been noticed, then he couldn't say anything. It was because he, as an adult and a senior warrior, feared a child's power and planned to do something deceptive. He felt ashamed of himself. More than anything. As his thoughts ran wild, he eventually accepted this. It felt like he was destined to die at Mumu's hands. Losing both arms wouldn't make much of a difference now. Clench. Mumu's hand gripped his left arm and clenched it. Quack. Shinny Ui Jayam's face heated up from the pain as Mumu asked. I want to ask you something. Say it. I heard many things about my father from my friends. Mumu had learned many things about his father from Jinhyuk and Moilwa. His father's life as a warrior was something that Mumu would never approve of, even if he wanted to. He heard that to claim dominion over the whole of the Central Plains, his father had mercilessly killed people and warriors of other factions as well as innocent people. After hearing all of this, Mumu changed his mind. I wish I didn't know at all. That was his honest opinion. His father, the most feared person of his era, was the opposite of himself, who was taught good things by his stepfather. The more he learned about his real father, the more disappointed he felt. Because of that, Mumu felt worried. Was it even right to seek revenge for such a person? If one adhered to filial duty, seeking revenge was the correct choice. However, his father was someone who many people feared. I don't know. Even if he took revenge, there would be no end. Jin Hyuk and Moilwa said that they would support him no matter what. However, if he had made this choice, he knew they would have to pretend to be fine even if they were not. Is this right? Mumu pondered this for a bit before deciding. He would see and then judge for himself. He would hold them responsible for killing his father, but the final decision to kill them was something he would decide after meeting them. I don't think he is a bad person. It was a judgment that Mumu had made after seeing this man suffer. Even now, he couldn't feel any resentment towards him. So instead, he felt more worry. He had accepted Shinny Ui Jayam's idea because he thought he could meet all four of them at once, but now he had something to ask. I heard that you and the other three went to where my father was and killed everyone there. Have you ever seen someone who could be my mother? It was about his mother. He had heard many things about his father, but none of them could say anything about his real mother, as all of his siblings were half-siblings. He wanted to know before he headed towards the imperial palace to meet Mule. Since this man was there as they killed both of his parents, he wondered if he would know. And Shinny Ui Jayam just looked at Mumu. No matter who looked, people would immediately refer to Mumu as a handsome boy with an appearance that women would love. Women of similar disposition were there during the time. The truth of what happened would likely shock him. Do you know about your mother's existence? Yes. She should be the one that gave birth to me. At Mumu's words, Shinny Ui Jayam became stiffer. To prevent any potential resurgence of that evil, he had gone there personally and made sure to eliminate every guard and person he and the other warriors could find. In the process, they had memories they couldn't erase until now. Can you not think of anyone? There were many women. Many? Right. And none of them looked like me? When we reached the base, we were constantly fighting the men, and in the process, a few of our men went after a child called Musam. He was believed to be that man's successor, and a couple of women tried to protect and escape with the child. Ah. Musam was mentioned here. Like what had been told, he died during the war. We were able to deal with everyone we encountered and entered the large castle and base. After a slight hesitation, Shin Ui Jayam then said. We killed everyone inside. Clench. Quack. At those words, Mumu's hand, which had loosened, clenched tightly around Shinny Ui Jayam's left arm. Shinny Ui Jayam, who had lost his strength further, groaned in pain as he continued. We searched all around the castle for anyone related to him. We then found several rooms with women. Many? Yes. There were many women and some crippled children too. Crippled. We were convinced that the children, whether in good health or crippled, were all children of that man. We decided to kill them, but the women stepped forward and begged us to let the children live. Mumu felt his face continue to become stiffer. The thought of his mother being one of those women emotionally hurt him. He was trying very hard not to kill this man on the spot. And you just killed them? We killed them. But they said things which were quite confusing as well. What does that mean? They claimed they had been abandoned by their lord, which was why they were begging for their children. They wouldn't be of any use to the lord, so they wished for the children to be spared. No use? We concluded that the children's skeleton structure wasn't optimal. Starting with the crippled children, they were useless to him. What do you mean? The women there were not actually his women. Rather, they were just women he used to make a child he wanted that had the right level of skeletal structure and muscles. Mumu's eyes darkened. Did that mean that his mother was also someone who was treated as a baby-producing tool and not a human? However, he couldn't believe everything this was saying either. He could be making things up to make him hate his father more. Mumu barely controlled himself. Then you mean my mother wasn't among them? I don't know. We killed them on the spot. Maybe one of them could have been your... Shinny Uijayam remembered something. Come to think of it, there was a peculiar woman and a baby. Unlike the other women, she looked dignified. Unlike the other women who begged for their lives, she had hidden constantly to ensure that her baby would be saved by someone while waiting for a change in the situation that would divert their attention. I am the woman of the man you fear, Hey Harang. I will give my life, so if you are people who would be called heroes, do not take a young life. The image of her last moments, as she died without losing her dignity even while being burned, was seared in his mind. A strong maternal love that desired to save her child. A woman that was different from the others. It was the first time the four of them had been moved by someone in that evil place. Their strong hearts had weakened. Moreover, unlike the other women and children they had killed, it was difficult to go after this woman who had just given birth. But there could be no exceptions. Who will do it? It hadn't been easy for anyone to step forward. I will do it. It was the southern blade of the emperor. A woman called Hey Harang and her child had died at his hand. No. Shinny Uijayam looked at Mumu and denied it in his mind. No, it cannot be. If that child had grown up, he would have been the same age as Mumu. However, the southern blade of the emperor wasn't the kind of a man to speak two things with one mouth. Mumu then coldly asked. Why are you not talking? There was a child your age, but that baby has to be dead. Then that woman cannot be your mother. Then you don't know who of the many is my mother. I am sorry. However, if you were outside the castle, maybe your mother wasn't even there? At his words, Mumu stared intently at him. He then sighed. I would have liked it if that was it. But I am still angry at what you people did. That. Even with your left arm being crippled, you don't seem that remorseful. Crack. Quack. Shinny Uijayam screams echoed through the forest. Shinny Uijayam screamed for a long time before eventually losing consciousness. Mumu, who was now finished, released his hand. Crack. It must have been difficult for Mumu to fully control his anger after hearing those words. His mind was complicated. What kind of existence was his father? Mule, Mui, Musum, unlike them, children who weren't perfect were abandoned. Women were only used for bearing children. And I am just one of them? Mui, and even the other subordinates, didn't know of his existence. That said, he could have been a failure. He couldn't rule out the chance of him being an abandoned child either. Thinking about this made him angry. It was becoming increasingly difficult to control his anger. Crack. Mumu's muscles began to bulge and compress. It was as if each muscle was alive. Goo. As the intensity of his emotions increased, the ground where Mumu stood began to crack and shake. Rumble. The bizarre phenomenon didn't stop there. Rocks and fragments of soil began floating up. Ba-dump. Mumu felt a strong heartbeat. At that moment, everything around him stopped. All of the visible boundaries began to break down with him as light and darkness swirled around him. What is this? At that moment, Mumu felt a strong attraction to it. The newly created boundary was trying to draw him into another space. He was trying to hold on, but Mumu's body was gradually sucked into it. It was then. Hack. At that moment, someone entered the boundary and put something on his left wrist. It was the band that controlled his strength. As soon as the band was put on his wrist, the swirling light and darkness disappeared, and the broken boundary returned to its original state. Everything had stopped. Tututu. The floating bits of rock fell to the ground. If I was a little late, I would have missed you. A soft voice rang in his ear. Mumu frowned and looked at the white-haired swordsman in front of him. Chapter 122. Title of the Youngest. Part 3.
A pause in space and time. With this, Mumu had torn down the boundaries of reality, and light and darkness had begun to intersect. Seeing this, the white-haired man clicked his tongue. I was worried that this would happen. The other side beyond the boundary was trying to draw Mumu in. Even if he tried to endure it, the boy would have no choice because this was the logic of these things. I thought it would take at least 20 years or so. The boy had broken through those expectations. Mumu's bands had been made using the purest form of iron. At one time, there was a well-known saying that this material would allow anyone to open the 6 points within their body. However, as time passed, cultivation was used to create the purest and cleanest metal to restrain energy. And how could a band that was strong enough to suppress a spirit beast break like this? Was this child born with the energy of heaven, earth, sun, and moon right from the womb? The probability was close to 1 in a million. The energy of heaven had distorted, and for one hidden moment, Mumu's existence was already in a realm that transcended humans. As long as he didn't learn martial arts or cover growth principles, he had thought that this child would be able to live like an ordinary boy. However, this only resulted in something else. A mistake in the plan. Instead, it seemed like the boy had grown even more. By looking at the surroundings, he could tell that Mumu's power was exponentially more than when the band suppressed it. This was no longer a state where he could ignore it. Was it right to leave him alone? For a moment, the man wasn't sure. Mumu had already gone beyond the realm of humanity. He wasn't sure if he should let this kind of human stay alive. But he felt a tug when he looked at Mumu's attempt to resist the world's logic.
Pat. Clack.
The old man placed the band back atop Mumu's left wrist just as the boy was about to be dragged to the other side. The light and darkness disappeared as soon as the band was placed back on, and the world's broken boundary returned to normal as if nothing had happened. If it was just a little later, it would have been a mess. Mumu looked at him, puzzled. White. Mumu noticed the old man's bright expression and felt warmth from him. This warm energy was only around the old man. Who are you? It has been so long. Been so long? So you know me. I am sure. Really? But I am meeting grandfather for the first time? Hee hee. At Mumu's words, the old man burst into laughter. He thought that Mumu would have been stained by violence due to the traces of the fight he saw. On the contrary, however, the child was still quite innocent. It was right to leave him to the scholar. Mumu's stepfather wasn't someone who knew about cultivation or warrior training, but was a man who had pure energy within him. So he had entrusted Mumu to him. It wasn't the wrong choice. Although it was invisible to the eyes of ordinary people, the bright light within Mumu was clear and innocent, without a single blemish. Thank God. This was what allowed Mumu to resist the pull. The old man then said, "You saw me when you were young, but I don't remember." Don't try hard to remember it. We will always cross the road if we go along the right path. What do you mean? It means that, naturally, we would end up meeting. Mumu tilted his head at those words and then asked with curiosity, but grandfather, how did you get those strength-controlling bands? He could see 3 more bands in the old man's hands. He had been sure that they had been broken. To that question, the man answered, I brought them because you left them. I thought they would last for 20 years, but they couldn't stand your strength. Mumu's eyes widened. This man knew about these bands then? How does grandfather know about them? Why wouldn't I know? This old man is the one who gave them to you. Grandfather did. Until now, Mumu had thought that these bands were given to him by his parents. Now, for the first time, he found out the truth. Mumu asked, Why did you have to put them on? According to my father, I have had them since I was a baby, then maybe.
No. No.
It isn't what you are thinking.
Ah.
I thought you were my real grandfather or something.
Hee. Not that.
The old man smiled broadly at those innocent words. Looking at Mumu, it seemed like he had grown up without knowing his real parents. There was nothing that could be done about his wish to see them. Mumu then asked, "Then why did grandfather have to put them on me? Didn't you feel it before?" What did he mean? Was he talking about that weird phenomenon? Didn't you feel like the world stopped just now, and the light and darkness began to intertwine into a path that was leading you? Path. Right. Are you talking about that force that was pulling me in? The old man nodded and answered, "That is called the logic of the world." What is that? At his question, the old man took a light breath before saying, "It is like the causality of everything." Causality. Yes, it is a bit difficult, but it is like order, karma, fate. Mumu's expression became more confused at his words as he could not understand. At this, the old man reached out to a fallen branch.
Tack.
He held the branch and drew a circle on the sand. Everything that is born has its own path and order, and it is known to be a moral order. But this ring isn't limited to just one, but innumerable. Innumerable. Yes. Sure. The old man began drawing circles and ovals over the original circle. Each time they overlapped, a type of sphere would be formed. The logic of the world creates numerous cycles that are constantly evolving. Normally, there shouldn't be a way out of this circle. Our lives don't always stray away from this line and the circles drawn, and they stay within the loop. That is how fate works. As you can see, there are too many overlapping circles. So difficult. You don't have to understand it all. Simply put, it is rare, but there are cases where they deviate from the circle once in a while. An existence outside the eye of heaven. Mumu was born there, so the heavens were trying to take him back. Are you saying I am out of this loop? That is correct. Usually you would need to train for a long time to even see the rings that would lead you out. In Buddhism, it is referred to as a shell. Shell? It's just a word that is used. Those who cross this border are known to be supreme beings, transcendence, and more. Mumu tilted his head. Then, you mean I almost ended up going to a higher plane? Well, simply put, yes. Is it a huge deal if one transforms into one of the supreme beings? If you crossed the border you saw, you would never be able to return. It is because you have already broken out of this loop. But why did I? The band had always played a role in suppressing your strength from breaking out. This. Mumu raised his left hand.
Chick.
The band was already burning red and continued to glow. Just one isn't enough. The old man saw this and bit his lip.
Womb.
The other bands moved as two of them merged into one. As they merged, a 5-colored band was formed, and he came to place it on Mumu. At that moment, the red band joined it as well. The bands had been made of steel and looked like such in the past. However, now it was gold. Crack. Mumu's muscles, which had begun to swell up, were slowly shrinking. This. And it is heavy. Mumu felt his body become heavier than before. It felt much heavier than when he placed the dial on 8. This band also seemed to be suppressing more of his strength. Mumu wondered why as he looked at the band and noticed that the dial had been changed from 8 to 10. There is a reason why it turned heavy. The old man then said, "This is the original form of the band. This is."
Right.
Without this, it seems like it can no longer bear your strength. I don't have much time, so let's just talk about this. You don't have time? The old man smiled and said, "If possible, never take the bands off your body. Your power is already above the realms of normality. If you take it off and lose control like you did now, the path will open up once again to pull you to the other side. And I cannot come back if I leave, at least not until you learn to control it." Mumu looked a bit uneasy at this. So there would be a way if I could control it? This question made the old man look at Mumu. Despite reforming the complete form of the bands, he wasn't sure how long they would last. In the end, he was sure they would meet again. Control it by yourself. Mumu had been born with the energy of heaven, earth, moon, and sun. His body was already above any other. Instead of trying to cultivate clear energy, it would be better to cultivate his mind. The old man then said, "Then will you follow this old man into his clan and try to hone yourself?" "What do you mean?" "I am talking about becoming a monk." "Don't they live in the mountains?" "Hehehe, you are right." That is, Mumu had already lived 17 years of his life in the mountains. He didn't want to become a monk and live there in isolation from other people. Seeing Mumu's reaction, the old man nodded in satisfaction. "This is good." He pulled something out of his sleeves. The item was similar to a pouch. As soon as he opened it, something large popped out of it.
Ah.
Seeing Mumu's curiosity, the old man smiled. The pouch was small, but it could hold a lot of things. As he turned the pouch upside down, a black stone tablet emerged. On it was a poem.
Ah.
Mumu's eyes shone. Something about the black stone tablet looked familiar. He looked at it with puzzlement as the old man said, "This is a part of the enlightenment left by the sages who had left the way of martial arts long ago." Enlightenment. This is the second half of it, and it is engraved with the intent for those who read it to engrave it and to achieve a pure energy to hold their ground. You are saying to cultivate the mind? Even though the first half of it isn't intact, what you need is to discipline the mind and control yourself, so this will be of great help.